Oh, yeah!
Hey, have your attention.
Shut up!
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Got my five, brother.
Suffering succotash, son.
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
Riley! Randy! Riley! Randy! Riley! Randy! Jimmy!
This is my yard now.
Suplex City, bitch!
Welcome to yet another edition of Willpower Radio. I will be getting into this Monday Night Raw. Superstar Shakeup happened and the rosters have been indeed shooken up, if you will. And I gotta say, just as an overall perspective, I think SmackDown with the superstars that they transferred over to Raw this year, SmackDown's in a lot better shape than they were last year. Because last year, that Superstar Shakeup really left SmackDown with bits and pieces of what they formerly were. But I think this year, it's a much more fair trade. And we're going to see what SmackDown exactly gets tomorrow from Monday Night Raw. But in terms of what they gave to Raw, well, let's get started. The show opened up with the first announced wrestler coming to Raw. And that was none other than Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal making his way to Raw, bringing the United States Championship with him, but he didn't have it with him for too long because he, under the condition of Kurt Angle, was sentenced to defend his United States Championship against an open challenger, anyone on the Raw roster. Kurt Angle said, if you want to be the best, if you want to talk like you're the best on Raw, I don't know how you do things on SmackDown, but here on Raw, you got to fight for it. So Jeff Hardy comes out to answer Jinder Mahal's challenge, and it's a United States Championship match. Jeff Hardy actually ends up beating Jinder Mahal with the twist of fate to the Swanton Bomb, and just like that, Jeff Hardy is your new United States Champion. I'm personally happy to see Jeff Hardy get another shot at a mid-card championship, see Jeff Hardy do his own thing as a singles competitor. I'm excited to see what he can do and how far he can go, what his ceiling is exactly in 2018 as a singles competitor. Will we see Jeff Hardy rise to the main event again? And more importantly, will we see him on Monday Night Raw? Or will Jeff Hardy be one of the Raw superstars to be traded to SmackDown? I think so. I think Seth Rollins, at this point, stays where he is on Monday Night Raw, and Jeff Hardy goes to SmackDown. I originally thought Seth Rollins and Jeff Hardy would go to SmackDown, but with Jeff Hardy winning the United States Championship, only one of them is going to go to SmackDown. And at this point, I see it being more Jeff Hardy than Seth Rollins. After all, Seth Rollins would have to make some new t-shirts if he went to SmackDown. And after that match, Jinder Mahal was taunted backstage by none other than No Way Jose. And I suppose this gives us an insight into possibly what Jinder Mahal's role will be on Monday Night Raw if he's mingling with the likes of No Way Jose. Bayley then had a match with Sasha Banks, and this match, it went to a no contest. It wasn't exactly the blow-off to their feud that maybe we were expecting, but it went to a no contest due to the Riot Squad making their Raw debut and coming out and attacking both women. So the Riot Squad transferring over to SmackDown, or to Raw, I should say, from SmackDown. Old three members now on Raw. So the Raw Divas division, or women's division, I should say, it's like I'm back in 2009 here, is looking pretty strong at this point. The Authors of Pain also defeated Heath Slater and Rhino. Once again, squash match, getting the Authors of Pain a little bit more exposure on Monday Night Raw. Nothing else much there, really. And then The Miz had a Miz TV segment, and he promised to introduce the two newest Raw superstars coming from SmackDown. And they were none other than Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. So I predicted that we would see one member, Kevin Owens maybe, go to Raw and Sami Zayn go to SmackDown. I thought we would finally see them split from each other since they've been together for so long, but that's not exactly what happened here. Looks like they're both going to be linked together still on Monday Night Raw, and Kurt Angle interrupted the segment. He said that he didn't want them on Raw. Basically, that's what he said. And that led to Sami Zayn pulling out an email he got from Stephanie McMahon, which said that she did want Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn on Monday Night Raw, which overruled Kurt's ire, his lack of desire to have them on Monday Night Raw. But Kurt Angle did reveal in this segment that although Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn are now on Monday Night Raw, The Miz will be moving to SmackDown because Daniel Bryan demanded that The Miz be moved to SmackDown. And that's without The Miztourage. So The Miz moving to SmackDown, we knew this was coming. You can't have Daniel Bryan return to the ring and not have him wrestle The Miz, right? Their feud has been going on for years now, and this is a payoff that we've been waiting for. So The Miz tomorrow night will be on SmackDown. We had another tag team eliminator match. Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy, they faced off with a Revival, and they won. Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy looked really good here teaming up. They had some solid chemistry between each other as a tag team, and Bray Wyatt looks rejuvenated as a tag team competitor. As a competitor in general, I think this face turn with Matt Hardy, this pairing with Matt Hardy, has really done a lot for Bray Wyatt, and I'm excited to see what can come from him next. And at the end of the match, Bray Wyatt hit Sister Abigail on Scott Dawson, I think it was, and then Matt Hardy, with the assist of Bray Wyatt, hit an assisted Twist of Fate on Dash Wilder to pick up the victory. So at the Greatest Royal Rumble, we are going to get Bray Wyatt and Broken Matt Hardy, or Woken Matt Hardy, whatever you want to call him, against The Bar. And I'm thinking Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy win it all. It's time for them to get a run with the Raw Tag Team Championship. And speaking of tag teams, we had Breezango making their Raw debut backstage. So I really thought we were going to get the Usos or the New Day on Monday Night Raw. I was shocked that neither of those teams, considering how often they faced each other, that neither of them were moved. So the Usos remain on SmackDown, the New Day remains on SmackDown, but Breezango makes their way to Monday Night Raw. And another SmackDown superstar that made her way to Monday Night Raw, to my surprise, it wasn't Becky Lynch, it wasn't Charlotte, but it was Natalya. Now, I predicted that Natalya would make her debut to Monday Night Raw, but I thought the other ladies that I mentioned, Charlotte and Becky Lynch, would also make their debut or make their way to Monday Night Raw, but that didn't happen. So we have Natalya on her way to Raw. She confronted, or more so greeted, Ronda Rousey backstage while Rousey was talking to Kurt Angle. So I suppose Natalya is now a babyface. She's been a heel for about a year now, maybe longer. And now all of a sudden she's a babyface on Raw. Why not? She's on Raw. It's a fresh start. Why not have her be a babyface? There's nothing to lose from that at all. And Ember Moon had a spot on Raw. She faced Mickie James. And this was a pretty quick match. But man, Ember Moon, she hit an absolutely savage looking eclipse on Mickie James. Mickie James did a front flip basically when she was selling this eclipse from Ember Moon. And oh yeah, Ember Moon won the match. So good stuff from Ember Moon there. Really excited. I feel like this is a running theme throughout this commentary that I'm excited to see what's coming next from some of these superstars. But Raw is stacked right now. They got a lot of good new talent on the show, and it's going to lead to some fun new matchups. I'm excited for that. Speaking of new matchups, Dolph Ziggler also made his way to Raw, and this was the moment of the night that I didn't really care about. I feel like Dolph Ziggler is such damaged goods. At this point, it's really hard to care about him at all. So I wasn't too terribly of a big fan of this at all, really. But Dolph Ziggler made his way to Monday Night Raw. Titus Worldwide came out during Dolph Ziggler's promo and offered him a spot in Titus Worldwide. Ziggler declined, and he actually had his new associate, Drew McIntyre, help him beat up Titus Worldwide. They assaulted them from behind. So Drew McIntyre is now on Monday Night Raw as a heel, it looks like. And I don't really like this. I don't like Drew McIntyre being paired up with Dolph Ziggler. Of all people, as I mentioned, Dolph Ziggler's damaged goods. He has gone as far as he's ever going to go, in my opinion, in WWE, and he seems more focused on outside ventures like his stand-up comedy routine than he does on being a professional wrestler at this point. So I'm not sure where Drew McIntyre benefits from being with Dolph Ziggler at this point. The only thing I can hope for is that McIntyre disposes of Ziggler sooner rather than later, so McIntyre can do his own thing, because he has a lot of potential, and I think he could rise up the ranks to be a main event player sometime this year, quite frankly. So Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre, both on Raw, both together, both allies, but for how long? Hopefully not too long, in my opinion. Roman Reigns then cut a promo about Brock Lesnar and the greatest Royal Rumble, and typical Roman Reigns promo saying he's here, Brock Lesnar's not. Brock Lesnar actually will be making his return to Raw next week, but Roman Reigns is interrupted by Samoa Joe, and Samoa Joe just talks to Roman Reigns saying, I notice how you're always bragging about being here, but you're never bragging about getting the job done, because you can't. When it comes to Brock Lesnar, he has your number, and they played a video package of basically Brock Lesnar kicking Roman Reigns' ass, whether it was WrestleMania 31, SummerSlam last year, or WrestleMania 34 from a week ago. Basically just a video package of Roman Reigns getting wrecked by Brock Lesnar. And it looked like after that, Samoa Joe was going to get physical with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns called Samoa Joe out, and he said, that video package just showed what Brock Lesnar can do. How about we see what your fat ass can do? And you get to the ring in a pretty funny moment of the night. Samoa Joe, he teased it. You really thought Samoa Joe was going to get into that ring and face against Roman Reigns, but it didn't happen, and we will see them face each other at Backlash. And WWE made it official. It had been a strong rumor for a couple months now, but Backlash will not only be the first co-branded pay-per-view between Raw and SmackDown. From now on, every pay-per-view will be co-branded between Raw and SmackDown. So we'll have to see how that affects some of the lower card performers who are now on Raw or SmackDown. And I will get to the rest of the roster moves that took place, not on television tonight, but on WWE.com in just a bit. Natalya, she faced off against Mandy Rose. Natalya won with the sharpshooter, and Sonya Deville attacked Natty after the match. And Ronda Rousey actually made the save here for Natty, and there was a really fun moment, I thought, when Ronda Rousey made the save, and none other than Sonya Deville, she went in the ring while Ronda Rousey was checking on Natalya, and she challenged Ronda Rousey. And I thought this was fun because Sonya Deville actually does have a legit MMA background. She's not nearly as accomplished of a fighter as Ronda Rousey is, but she squared up to Ronda. She wanted to get some strikes in, and Ronda completely overwhelmed her, landing 6 or 7 quick strikes and then a vicious takedown on Sonya Deville. So I like that. It made Ronda look legit. She is legit, and she totally treated Sonya Deville like her punching bag. And speaking of Sonya Deville, now that the Riot Squad is on Monday Night Raw, is Absolution going to be on Monday Night Raw? Are Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose going to split rosters? We'll have to see tomorrow night, but right now you got to expect some changes to be made to the Raw women's division. Asuka possibly moving to SmackDown, maybe, as I mentioned, Mandy Rose or Sonya Deville moving to SmackDown, or maybe even Sasha Banks or Bayley. And although he wasn't live on Raw tonight, there was a video package played for Baron Corbin, who's also now on the Raw roster. And at this point, I realized Raw basically traded their entire mid-card, or SmackDown basically traded their entire mid-card to Raw. So you had Baron Corbin, Jinder Mahal, Dolph Ziggler, and then Breezango, who is lower mid-card tag team. So I like this because they're not trading Daniel Bryan or Shinsuke Nakamura or AJ Styles or Randy Orton, who I thought for sure would go to Raw tonight. So unlike last year, where Dean Ambrose and The Miz and Bray Wyatt, really the nucleus of SmackDown's main event scene, besides AJ Styles, they were all traded to Raw, and it really gutted SmackDown. So we didn't see that this year. Instead, we just saw mid-card players move to Raw, and I think that's less detrimental to SmackDown and more beneficial to Raw because we're going to see some new matchups and it doesn't exactly gut the SmackDown roster. We'll have to see who goes over to Raw tomorrow night. And speaking of Breezango, they actually had a match against the Bar and they actually picked up the victory. This was a pretty goofy match here. Fandango doing some of his usual stuff, the hip grinding, all that stuff he likes to do. It was pretty funny. He even wore Sheamus's camo jacket at one point. And they picked up the victory when Tyler Breeze, was able to roll up and pin Cesaro for the upset victory. And then the main event of the night, Finn Balor, Seth Rollins, Braun Strowman, Bobby Lashley, and the newest member of Monday Night Raw, not Randy Orton, not AJ Styles, not Shinsuke Nakamura, not Daniel Bryan, but Bobby Roode making his Raw debut. They faced off against Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, The Miz, Curtis Axel, and Bo Dallas. So Roode was the final draft or the final superstar to be shaken up to go to Monday Night Raw. So as I mentioned, really not a whole lot of main event players, if any, that were switched over from SmackDown to Raw, unless you consider Dolph Ziggler or Jinder Mahal a main event player. Mainly just upper mid-carders, if you ask me. And Bobby Roode, it was a little bit of a disappointment, honestly, to see him be the final pick. I was really hoping for Randy Orton because I think a move to Raw for him could do a lot for him, maybe open up the possibilities for a heel turn, but that didn't happen. Anyways, the babyfaces here picked up the win in a pretty solid match. Nothing to rave about, but a permissible 10-man tag match. Easy for me to say. And the Miz Taraj, they actually turned their back on the Miz here. They refused to tag the Miz in at the end of the match, which led to him eating a power slam from Braun Strowman, and the babyfaces celebrated to end the night. And as I mentioned, I would talk about earlier, despite there being quite a few members of SmackDown being traded to Raw on television, there were some interesting picks and switches, brand switches, that did not take place on television, and I'm going to get into them right now. So we actually had Zack Ryder and Mojo Rawley both move from SmackDown to Raw, and I'm not sure if this really benefits either man, since Raw, depending on who moves from Raw to SmackDown tomorrow, and this is very dependent on that, I'm not sure how much room there is for Zack Ryder or Mojo Rawley on Raw, how much television time they will really get. I'm surprised they both moved. It almost makes me think they'll reunite the Hype Bros or something along those lines. But one tag team that will not be reuniting anytime soon is Chad Gable and Shelton Benjamin. Chad Gable traded from SmackDown to Raw, so that effectively and immediately breaks up Chad Gable and Shelton Benjamin's tag team. They were an okay tag team. I felt like Chad Gable could have been doing more, so I don't think this is a worse move in the world, and I'm optimistic to see what Chad Gable does on Monday Night Raw. And lastly, the Ascension made their way from SmackDown to Raw. So with the Ascension moving to SmackDown to Raw, with Breezango moving from SmackDown to Raw, I got to think at least one tag team from Raw will be moving to SmackDown, maybe the Revival. Who knows? So that was this edition of Monday Night Raw in a nutshell, and some of the SmackDown, or all of these SmackDown superstars who were moved to Raw. And we'll have to see how that plays out. And also we'll have to see who Raw loses tomorrow to SmackDown, and what the SmackDown landscape will be like after that happens. So that does it for me on another episode of Willpower Wrestling here on YouTube. If you like this, if you want to hear more, you can listen to some more every Monday from 2 to 4 p.m. on PalomarCollegeRadio.com. I do my own show there, Willpower Radio, and you can tune in. I get into the whole week of WWE, so you can listen PalomarCollegeRadio.com. Also AM 1320 and Cox Channel 957 if you are in the San Diego area. So that does it for me, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time on another edition of Willpower Wrestling.